is Bailey. Welcome back to my channel. Today, this is an exciting one, in my opinion. We are going to do the mid-year book freakout tag, and the reason it's exciting is because not only are we going to just kind of review everything I've read so far this year, it was also the very first video I did on my channel, so it's almost been a year. It's kind of crazy. Doesn't feel like it. So, let's get started. The first question is the best book I've read this year. It's supposed to be the best book, but that is rude, okay? That is just a rude question to ask of somebody, in my opinion, to pick one book that is their favorite, especially when they've read almost 40 books this year. So, I chose two. I restrained myself and chose two, okay? So I picked Weyward by Amelia Hart. This is kind of like a historical fiction, magical realism novel, and I've done a vlog about this book where I talked about it a lot, and I've talked about it I think a few other times during my channel, but this one is just told about a family, like a family lineage, and it's told in the perspective of three women in the family, one in 1619, 1942, and 2019. So all of these women belong to the same lineage, and it is just kind of telling hardships women went through during all those time periods and how kind of similar they are, which is disgusting, and just how they've dealt with it. And the magical realism part is these women are quote-unquote witches, so they have these abilities, and yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. It was just very beautifully written. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. This was Amelia Hart's debut novel, and I'm very excited to see what she comes out with after this. It'll be hard to beat this one. It was so good, but I highly, highly recommend this one. I loved it so much. And then the next one, I don't actually have it with me because I listened to it, but it was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I talked about this one in my last wrap-up video, but it is about this woman. She is married to this man, and on their 1-year anniversary, around that time, he goes on a trip where there's a helicopter ride, and he unfortunately, the helicopter crashes, and he is lost out at sea and presumed dead. So this is, I think, 5 years later, I want to say. She is engaged to be married to another man, and they are out to dinner, and she gets a call from her husband who she thought was dead. And this is her figuring out what the F to do with that information. And at the very beginning, you find out that her husband isn't dead, so that's not really spoiling anything. I think that's in the first chapter. And then it jumps back to her in high school meeting her husband, and then it goes from there. Literally starts from there and goes to where, she found out he was alive, and then kind of what she does with that information. Poor girl. But this book, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I cried the whole time. The whole book, I was crying because I just can't imagine. And just one chapter she'd be oh yeah, I'm gonna choose him. And then the next chapter she's wait, how do I'm gonna choose him because what the heck? And it's just, wow. It's just really sad. But I really enjoyed the ending. I like who she picked. I know some people didn't, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's a movie, and I haven't watched it. I keep forgetting that. I need to watch it. But that was my other favorite book of this year. The best sequel, y'all. I don't think I've read any other sequel this entire year, so that it was kind of easy to pick. But I think even if I read multiple sequels, I still would have chose this. But A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I just finished this a week ago, and it was incredible, people. A Court of Thorns and Roses was okay. Very average. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. Wasn't my favorite. But this book was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing. I loved everything about it. Not a thing I would change. Not a thing I would change. And the ending blew my mind. Blew my mind. And I cried. So that is definitely the best sequel I've read. Can't tell you anything about that one, but I can tell you about A Court of Thorns and Roses, I guess. If you don't already know. because it's everywhere. It is everywhere right now. I can't even believe these books came out as long ago as they did, and they are everywhere. Let's see. This is the second one. I don't have the first one. It's over there, and I don't want to go get it. The second one came out in 2016. But yet, so I think that one was 2014 or 2015 probably, but everyone is talking about these books right now, and it has been so long. 7 years since this one came out, but yet everyone's talking about them now. It's crazy to me. It is crazy to me, the SJ fandom. Sarah J. Maas fandom. But the first one is about this girl. Her name is Feyre. I don't like her name. Feyre. And she lives at home with her sisters and her dad in this shack-ish cabin. They're very poor, and they lost all their money. They used to be rich, but they lost all their money. So it opens up with her hunting for food for her family, so they don't starve to death and die. It's very Hunger Games-esque in that aspect. Katniss Everdeen hunting literally opens up on the same scene. Anyway, she is hunting and she sees a deer, but a wolf attacks the deer, or is like about to attack the deer, so she shoots the wolf, and then, or no, I think he did attack the deer, because if she shot the wolf, the deer would have ran. So I think he did attack the deer, but she shot the wolf before he could destroy it, so that she could have the deer. So she skins the wolf, she skins the deer, takes him with her. She doesn't keep the wolf. She takes the deer with her, but keeps his hide. And whatever, they have food. So a few days later, somebody comes and knocks on the door, and he was like, hello, that was my friend you murdered, and he was a fairy, and in the treaty, you're not allowed to kill fairies unless they're attacking you, blah, 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 so now I have to take you to come with me. And so she goes with this random-ass man to live in his castle because she killed this fairy guy. Anyway, it's very much like a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling with fairies. Obviously, there's like a romance. Some shit happens. It was good. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I didn't love what happened in the end, but I understand why it needed to happen for the rest of the series, of course, but I didn't love it, okay? I just didn't love it. But that's what the series is kind of about, I guess. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's very good. Very good. Oh, a new release. This is the third question. A new release you need to read. What did I do with it? Oh, here it is. I didn't put these books in order on this table right here. I just threw them about. So this one is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I read No Exit this year, which it didn't come out this year by any means, but I read it this year, and I really, really loved it. And this was his release from this year. I want to say it came out in May. May is when I got it from Book of the Month, so maybe it did come out in May. But this one is about our main character writes a bad review about a book on like Goodreads or something, I don't know. And the author reads it and is like responding to her very aggressively, like, what the heck? Why didn't you like my book? kind of thing. And I think it's just like a creepy novel because she thinks the author is then hunting her down and trying to kill her. So very suspense thriller-esque. I have it on my like next up to be read, so I plan on reading this one very, very soon. But it just sounds so good, and as much as I loved No Exit, I'm very excited about this one. Taylor Adams does have one that came out in between called Hairpin Bridge that I have not heard really good things about at all, so I'm probably never going to pick that one up, but I've heard good things about this one so far, and it just sounds so freaking good, so very excited for this one. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm picked Midnight is the Darkest Hour. It is by Ashley Winstead. So she wrote The Last Housewife, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I haven't read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife yet, but I read The Last Housewife and really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, so very excited to read. I need to read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife too, but very excited to read her next one. I think it comes out in October. I don't really know anything that it's about though. I'm gonna be honest. I know nothing. It's a thriller. That's all I know. And that's all I need to know. Biggest disappointment. Oh God. Nobody come for me right now, okay? Joe's already yelled at me about it. I don't need to hear anyone else yell at me about it. But I picked Legends and Lattes from Travis Baldree. I didn't care. Is that rude? I don't know. Everyone loves it. Everyone gives it 5 stars. I don't get it, okay? I don't get it. Yeah, I guess it's cozy. Not a lot happens. And I guess that's the cozy aspect. And I like the fact that she owned like a cute little coffee shop and then the bakery and blah, 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 blah. And the quarrel in the book isn't like a main part of it. It's just kind of like a side story. I don't know. I didn't care. That's very aggressive. But I was talking to Joe about it because he was like, wow, like I can't, because I think I've said somewhere else that I didn't love it. And he was, oh, probably a freaking wrap up, Bailey. But Joe, we were talking about it, and he was like, it's probably because you haven't read any fantasy. Like, most fantasy is very action-packed. There's a lot of death and war and all of these really big, aggressive, epic things, because Joe reads a lot of fantasy. And he's like, and that's a fantasy that isn't that way. He's like, so I think that's why everyone loves it, but you haven't read fantasy. At the time I hadn't read, which I still have barely read any fantasy. It's very new to me. But he was like, you just haven't really experienced fantasy in the same way as most of the people who are reading this are. And he thinks that's maybe why I didn't get it. Because it's just another book to me. But most other people who read it have read a lot of fantasy, read like the harshness of it, and then this is like a step back from that. It is very warm and cozy. Nothing really terrible happens. It's super cutesy. I don't know, okay? It just wasn't my vibe. But it was still fine. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. The biggest surprise, I put Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, just because it was, I've read a few fantasy, YA fantasy here and there, whatever. That one had to be adult. I think that was like the first adult fantasy really that I've read, I think. But it was like the first fantasy book that I was like, okay, like I'm in. Like I'm convinced I could enjoy this genre. Like this book was amazing. I loved every minute of it and I want to read more. That was like the first fantasy that I ever felt that way, I think. So I think that was why it was the biggest surprise for me, is just because I went into it kind of nervous because it was a fantasy. It's kind of big, it's kind of huge, and it's an adult one, but I ended up loving it. Loved it so much. It is about our main character, Araya. She is a human living in a vampire world. When she was young, I want to say 3, I don't know why, I don't know what her age was, but she was super young. The vampire king came to her village, destroyed it, found her in the rubble, took her with him, and raised her as his daughter. Obviously she's a human, he's the vampire king of this world. Vincent was his name. But so she grew up with this vampire dad, and so she's aware of vampires. She's been around them her whole life. He teaches her how to fight, so she becomes really strong, quick, can defend herself against them because obviously they're strong and badass, whatever. And there is this competition in this book. I can't remember what the competition's name was. That's upsetting. But it's very much like Hunger Games, except in this one you have to volunteer to be a part of it, but it's all the vampire. Okay, I'm sorry, this is very confusing. In this world, there's like different kinds of vampires. So there's 3 houses, and there's like different vampires in all these houses, whatever. So it's all these houses, these vampires who volunteer to be in this competition. They go and they all fight each other, and there are these trials, and the last one standing gets this wish from their goddess, Nyaxia. And I'm pretty sure it can be like whatever you want. She's a freaking goddess, you know. And our main character goes into this competition. I don't know how that's allowed because she's a human, but whatever. She goes into this competition, and thus things happen. And there's a romance in it with one of the vampires, which was slightly part of it that convinced me to read it. Okay. But I enjoyed the action parts of the trial. I wish there was more of the trial in the novel. I feel like a trial would happen, like the first trial or whatever. It was super short. And then there'd be weeks in between the next trial because I think it happened at moon phases. So they had a lot of time in between to recover, honestly, because they had a lot of injuries. I wish there was more of the trials in the novel. That'd be my only complaint really, is I felt like those parts were really short. But I really enjoyed those aspects of it. But other than that, I really enjoyed the book, and it's like a vampire Hunger Games-esque novel. and it's a series, so it's a duology, I guess. So there's a second one. I haven't read that one yet, but I'm very excited to read it. I don't remember the name of it though. Next, favorite new author. I have more than one, friends. It's pretty much every new author I've read from this year, I think, is on this freaking list. So Carissa Broadbent, the one who wrote Serpent and the Wings of Night. Sarah J. Maas, obviously, who wrote A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have Abby Jimenez on the list. So I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez this year, and definitely a new favorite author. I love this book. I've bought 2 more of her books since then. The second one to this, and then the first one to another like series she's written I bought. So very excited to read more of hers because this was incredible. Amelia Hart, who wrote Weyward. I'm very excited to read some other stuff she wrote. Is that all? Yeah, those were all. I thought there was more. So those authors. Newest fictional crush, baby. It's gotta be Reese. It's gotta be him. Okay? You know, before I read this, it probably would have been Rain from Serpent and the Wings of Night, but I think Reese takes the cake on this one. I loved him. So, he's just another character in this series, and he wasn't in the first one a whole lot. He was in it, of course, but he's in this one a lot, and I really, really like him now. Love him, actually. But I can't tell you very much about him because it would kind of spoil a lot of the series, so I'm sorry. New favorite character, just in general. So I was trying to do like not a one I had like a crush on, but I chose Brianna, I think that's her name. It is not even the main character in this book. It is her best friend in this book, which she is the main character of Yours Truly, which is the one that comes after this. So I'm so excited to read that one because I loved her in this. She's just freaking hilarious, and she was just such a good friend. And I feel like she's like one of those friends who's like, you're being stupid. Here's what you need to do. She was very blunt. She's very sarcastic, and I loved her. She was hilarious. So she's definitely, I think, my favorite character. My new favorite character. Books that made you cry. Friends, I cried a lot, okay? It's been in like the last few months I've been crying. I think I'm just really into books that are making me cry right now. Weyward made me cry a little bit at the end. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. Part of Your World made me cry. It's a romance, okay? So I don't think this is spoiling it. But obviously, there is a conflict where they can't be together at one point in this novel because that's just how romances work, okay? Well, part of the book where they're not together, there is a scene that made me freaking bawl my little eyes out. I was literally outside in the front yard, like, taking my trash out while I was listening, because I usually just listen to books while I'm cleaning my house. And I was, like, crying outside, taking my trash out. I hope nobody saw me. It was freaking shameful. And then One True Loves, I've already mentioned, I cried that entire book. Like, there was no part of that book that I wasn't crying. I cry when I talk about it. I cry when I recommend it to people. I cry when I think about it. That book just makes me freaking emotional. Every summer after, this book made me cry a little bit. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. I don't think anything's made me cry as much as One True Loves. I don't know. This one may have done it. Happy Place by Emily Henry. My God. I'm pretty sure I cried during this whole book too. This book, I don't even know how to explain it other than it's just the cover because I let a friend borrow it. But this whole book is just like this is what it felt like to me. A slow, long, drawn out heartbreak. This book is not happy, despite the name, okay? It's very sad. If any of you are Taylor Swift fans, her song, You're Losing Me, is this book. Like, those two are perfect together. You're Losing Me and Happy Place, if you've heard the song and how effing sad it is, that's this book, okay? It's so sad. It's ridiculously sad. Thoroughly enjoyed it, but it is ridiculously sad. So that book made me cry a lot. I cried at the end of A Court of Mist and Fury. Some shit goes down, man. And I cried. And, oh, this one. Which, this is very odd for me. I cried at the end of this thriller novel. I cried. It was very good. And I definitely cried. Oh, all right, let me back up a little bit. Let me tell you what this frickin' book's about, other than it being super sad. It is about this couple. Don't remember their name. Don't come for me. Harriet and Wynne. They are broken up at this time that the book begins. They've been together for a long time. Can't remember how long. Like 8 years, I want to say. It's freaking ridiculous. Yeah, they met in college and they've been together since then. They broke up a few months ago, but none of them have told any of their friends because I don't actually know why. Literally ridiculous. They haven't told their friends. Well, every summer they go to this cabin with their friends at this tiny town. They do the same thing every year. It's like a tradition that they all do because they all met in college. Whatever. And this year's special for some odd reasons. I'm not going to tell you why. But because of that, they decide to keep the secret from their friends and not tell them this whole week because of how special this weekend is. So they are pretending they're together in front of their friends, but really they're broken up and have been for months. So yeah, that is the plot of this. And it goes back in time a lot to where the relationship, kind of the same thing, like I've said with a bunch of these books. Clearly I enjoy this plot. Obviously, you know they're broken up, and then it goes back into time to where they met and their first date, blah, 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 building up to when they broke up and why they broke up, because you don't know why they broke up in the beginning. And yeah, and it is just rips your damn heart out. And then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell is about this young girl. I think she's like 15 or 16. Her name's Ellie, and she goes missing one day. She leaves the house to go like the library and study for her big exams happening at the end of the year, and she never comes back home. And the only like evidence they have is they see her on like a street cam on a road walking by herself. Like no one's with her, so they have nothing to go off of here on what the heck happened. And this is 10 years later. They found her backpack in like the woods or something crazy, because they'd presumed her to have been a runaway because she took a bag with her, never came home. There was no foul play evidence. So they just assumed she ran away. But her mother, of course, her mother didn't believe that because, you know, she knows her daughter. Her daughter wouldn't run away. She's never ran away before, blah, blah, blah. She wasn't stressed. She was happy. You know, so this is 10 years later. They find her backpack in the woods, like buried. So they're now starting to think foul play was involved. And this is like the mother's, kind of like the mother's investigation of the whole thing, because she doesn't believe she was a runaway at all. And yeah, I don't really want to say much else. I do not enjoy, I'm not reading the description because I don't enjoy it. And I don't think you should read it because I kind of think it gives some shit away. I don't like that. I was like in the middle of this, not in the middle, but I was pretty far into this book and I read the synopsis and I was like, I feel like that kind of gives stuff away. So I didn't like that about the book. I don't recommend the synopsis. I think it kind of gives some shit away. But it is told dual timeline, you know, now she's gone missing. She's been missing, I mean, and then goes back to before she went missing, the day of, stuff that happened and led up to her disappearance. And it also has more than one perspective in it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Obviously, it has the girl who went missing and the mom's perspective, but there's like more perspectives. So I really enjoyed that when that happened, when the other perspectives popped out. But if you don't like multiple perspectives, I don't recommend it because it also doesn't label them. You kind of just got to figure it out, whose perspective you're reading from. But the very, very end of this book, something in like literally the last page, it made me cry a little bit. But it was a really good thriller. I read it in one day, one whole day. First time I've ever done that. I was very impressed with myself. Freaking started it at like midnight one night, and then I stayed up till 8 a.m. and I finished it. It was great. I work night shift, people. That's why I have weird ass hours. Next question. Oh, a book that made you happy. This one was really hard for me because obviously romances, I like romances. They can make you happy. Whatever. But I also like cried at all of them. So I didn't want to pick a book that I cried at. And then I also feel really weird picking a thriller because, you know, there's a lot of death and dark shit that happens in the thrillers I read. So I felt really weird picking any of those, despite the fact that I love a lot of the thrillers. So I chose The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I read this one, I want want to say February, but I could be wrong. This is kind of like a fantasy-esque book where this small little village town, they believe in this sea god, and every year they sacrifice a young girl of their village to go be the bride of the sea god. They call him, yeah, I think that was the sea god's bride. So they literally put them on a boat, take them to the middle of the ocean, throw them overboard as like a sacrifice to the sea god for them, like to be a bride. And they are hoping this will help with, you know, kind of normal things that you do sacrifices for gods for, you know, their family, health, the weather, their plants, what are they? Crops, there we go, Jesus. Or crops and stuff like that. So they continue to, every year, continue to make these sacrifices to the sea god because they just have really terrible luck. So they just keep doing it. And so in this book, or at the beginning of this one, the person they're sacrificing to the sea god is our main character's brother's lady friend. For some reason, she goes on the boat to go see them be sacrificed. Whatever, I don't really know. Before the girl that they've chosen to be sacrificed that year jumps, our main character like jumps in front of her and was like, no, I'll go, like, I'll be the sea god's bride. And she ends up jumping. And so this is like her story of going into this world. It's kind of like the afterlife. There's a lot of spirits in this world. And there's gods, a lot of gods, and kind of, yeah, we'll just say spirits. So it reminded me a lot of Spirited Away, which is a Studio Ghibli film, and I love that one. So I think that's why this book made me so happy, is because it just reminded me so much of Spirited Away, and I just really enjoyed the world of this book, and I don't know, I just loved reading it, and it made me really happy, and it was super cute. The ending was so cute. Yeah, it was so good. Highly recommend, especially if you love Spirited Away, and possibly Mulan. Yeah, I think it reminded me of Mulan a little bit too, just a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. Okay. Book to film adaptation, like your favorite book to film adaptation. I had written down something else. I'll just say two. F it. It's my video. I'll do what I want. I forgot about this one until I talked about it in a separate video I did today. The Cabin at the End of the World. I watched that movie this year and it was so freaking good. It was so good. There's a fly in here, so I'm sorry if you hear it. Our electricity went out a few days ago. There's this huge storm here in Tulsa. Winds of 100 miles per hour knocked out so many electric poles in this town. Tulsa be struggling. Oklahoma be struggling right now, okay? People still don't have power. It's been multiple days. But anyway, we didn't have power for like 24 hours. Thankfully, only that long, because a lot of other people have had that issue for days. But we opened some doors, and because we live in a really old house, and like our windows are so old, and Joe couldn't get any of them open. I think they've been like painted shut over the years. So we had to open our door, and we don't have a screen in between our door and our house. So the only way to be cool was to open the doors and get a little breeze going on in here. But now we have like 1 million flies, and we have fly traps, and the fly traps have caught 0 flies. I don't understand how that's possible. So we have flies buzzing around. So if you see me start freaking karate chopping, that's why. Cabin at the End of the World is a movie that came out this year by M. Night Shyamalan. It is so good. Highly recommend that movie because it was incredible. It is about this couple and their daughter going to this cabin for like a little vacation, and this strange group of people come to them and tells them, you have to sacrifice somebody in your family or the world's gonna end. And it just goes from there. It's super suspenseful. The movie is so suspenseful. It was so well shot, in my opinion. It was just so good. And I enjoyed the movie more than the book, believe it or not. That never comes out of my mouth, but that happened. And then this one's more of a show, but the Daisy Jones and the Six show on Prime is incredible. Really enjoyed that show. And they came out with a whole ass music album for the show, and I listen to that all the time. Even now, I listen to it all the time. So those are my two favorite book to film adaptations that have happened this year. Ooh, one more after this one, but the prettiest cover that I think the actual question is like the prettiest cover you've bought or been gifted this year. I technically bought this book a year or so ago, but it came to me this year, so I'm gonna pick it. It is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson did this like Kickstarter where if you donated to it, I think it was a certain price though. You had to pay an X amount of money and you would get these like secret novels he wrote in 2020. So this must have been, I don't know. You would get these novels that he wrote during 2020, being locked up at home. He wrote 4 novels and he wasn't gonna publish them. He kind of wrote them for his wife, he said. And then she read them and was like, dude, you need to publish these. I'm like, stop. So he did it on Kickstarter to where they would be these like kind of, they weren't supposed to be out to the public. They did end up going out to the public because it was super big, super high. Brandon Sanderson is a huge fantasy author. He got so much freaking money out of this Kickstarter. But I participated, mostly for Joe, because he likes Brandon Sanderson and fantasy. And so we got this special edition of this novel, and it's just so pretty. It's like foiled, embossed leather, and it is so pretty. And there's just like a lot of pretty pictures in it. That's not why I got it, but I think it is more beautiful because of the like photos in the book, more so than the cover. And it is like dual color printed, so there's a lot of green inside too. And each book has a different artist, so that was really cool. And I really like the chapter headings, like the farther you get along, this will like wrap around, which I thought was really pretty. Anyway, this book is about Tress. She lives on this little island. I'm pretty sure it's about her falling in love with like the prince of this island, or like the duke or something. And this kid's father is not happy about it, so he sends him off, I think, to find a new bride. And it's about her trying to like track him down. So very cute. I heard it's very like piratey because it's about her being on like a ship and like the things that happened to her on the way. The synopsis is nothing like that, but I've just kind of seen that in videos since then. But I think this is like the most beautiful book ever to exist. So there's that. That one goes up here because it's so pretty. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Literally all of them. Like, I don't know. I don't necessarily keep a running TBR like some people. I will literally just sit in front of my bookshelf, stare at my books, and pick a next book to read when it is time for me to read another book. So there's a few books that I have like set aside that I want to finish. I have a video to read X amount of books. These certain books before the end of the year, I have to get rid of them. So those obviously I would like to get through before the end of the year, but some other ones, definitely The Last Word. I want to finish A Court of Thorns and Roses. I want to read, the second book to The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I want to say it's called The Ashes and the Star-Crossed King or something. Not 100% on that. Yeah, we'll just go with those, because there's like everything, I want to read everything. But those for sure I really want to read, so I think that's all that I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I really enjoy filming this video, especially because like I said in the beginning, it was the first video I ever did. So let me know some of your answers to these questions down in the comments. But I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching. Bye.